And every day, nearly 1,500 people die from cancer. Currently, our national debt is more than $15 trillion and increases by 3.5 billion each day. The U.S. has more drug law violation prisoners per capita than any country in Europe has total prisoners.
Thank you.
And almost 8 million die from this horrible disease. In addition to cancer, millions more suffer from chronic pain, Alzheimer's, post-traumatic stress, arthritis, and countless other diseases and ailments. These conditions are serious, can lead you to solve these problems and illnesses plaguing our country. What if that one little thing was marijuana?
Hello, and welcome to the ABC of ADINKRAS. This book here is where I get all my information from. It's called How to Survive the 21st Century. One of the co-authors is Dick Gregory, a comedian and activist. This here book I've had over 40, 50 years. I studied under the worldwide churches. And I studied the Bible back and forth. For example, Genesis 11, the descendants of Shem. Did you know they lived, if all you do is read it for yourself, you can go into verse 12, where they lived 530 years, or you can go into verse 13, where they lived 403 years. You can drop down to verse 16, where they lived 430 years. But look what happens. In verse 26, they lived 70 years. What I'm trying to tell you is, once the Adam and Eve world started eating the meats and all that stuff, they were living thousands and 400 and 500 years. Read it for yourself. As the meat and all that stuff started messing up their minds and their bodies, the process also messed up the children and children's children. So now the lifespan turned to 70. So you will read this, but you won't detect that there's a gap, and you won't want to know why there's a gap. But I'm here to tell you there's a reason there's a gap. This is not a biblical show. I'm not a religious man. I'm a godly man, but I'm not a religious man. For the sake of the religious people, though, in order for me to identify with you, I will use scripture, and I'll use it mostly in the metaphor. Because the issues that I'm talking about is not religious and not biblical. It affects everybody. Everybody trapped up under the fourth dimension matrix, of course. Okay. When I get upset, now my granddaughter is getting ready to have heart surgery. She's only a baby. Yeah, that upsets me. Let me read you a little bit something here. Gotta find it first though. Uh-oh, the pages dropped out, no wonder. I have the pages by my napkin. I have a napkin. This topic here is about toxic babies. I'm not sure you can see that. I'll just read just a little here. Dr. Belair states that unless the mother is detoxified, the baby comes into the world full of toxins from the mother's blood and intestines full of meconium, which which is spelled Leconium, which is a black bile. The baby is in fact so toxic that even with the best care, it usually takes 3 years to eliminate his or her inherited birth poisons. Food is your best medicine. Chronic and acute diseases of childhood result from toxicity of the mother's body and the diet of the child. Dr. Belair states from personal experience that excess protein intake during infancy and childhood, depending upon concentration, can result in leukemia, cancer, rheumatism, polio, skin diseases, heavy starch and mucus-inducing foods, all dairy products, grain, sugars, and breads bring on serious respiratory disorders. Asthma, pneumonia, measles, chronic runny nose, toxemia stemming from an excess of fatty foods expresses itself as acne, boils. A child born of properly prepared parents would not develop these or other serious disorders.
We're hearing more and more about marijuana's treatment in cancer, and some forms of brain cancer, glioblastoma.
There's a lot of work going on around the world. There's a huge study going on showed that a 21-day treatment of CBD, the CBD alone, kills the cancers. It turns the gene that can be on when the tumor is very aggressive off, and then the tumor goes through cell suicide, which is called apoptosis, and cuts off the blood supply to itself and dies. To me, since it's so safe, if I were able to get it on cancer, I'd probably take it. It's hard to believe that ultimately, 100 years from now, chemotherapy and radiation are going to be the end-all treatment for anything.
Hey, they got me all boxed into this matrix here. Did you hear that? That's great news. So marijuana is also a healing drug. That's such great news. I got to say, I'm so glad for that. And those who have and cannot get off the meat, that is the best solution right there, if you ask me. Because the best thing is to not even have to have those diseases.
Israel.
But that don't be it all. Israel controls the weed.
Government is already said to be growing the beneficial strand at Tikkun Olam, Israel's largest and most advanced medical marijuana facility. Cannabis, as it was originally known.
Now watch this. This is mostly for you young people who may not know this at all. That marijuana was legal years ago.
Was used for medicinal purposes long before it was ever used to get one high. In fact, this potent plant was used as a medicine for over 3,000 years, and it has only been illegal in the U.S. for the past 70 years.
The history of marijuana, particularly its medical use, is as old as the history of medicine itself.
Ancient records indicate that it was used in China as far back as 27 BC.
We're in the first known pharmacopoeia of the entire world, called the Shengnang Pensao. Cannabis receives a very important part in medical practice in allowing the first anesthetic for surgery to take place in ancient China, using cannabis as the anesthetic for surgery.
As the plant continued to slowly move out of Asia and India, it is believed to have been introduced on a larger scale into Europe by the 19th century.
It was finally introduced to Western European medicine in 1839 by a man named W.B. O'Shaughnessy.
I guess Mexico and Mexican people are not the authors of the marijuana coming into America after all. I think this guy here is. This guy that they show right there. I think that the Mexicans later on wanted a piece of the pie and got control of it, maybe something like that.
So how can all of these cases of marijuana healing medical conditions be explained from a scientific point of view? Well, perhaps, just maybe, we are wired for weed, so to speak, and there's a system in our body that combines to cannabis on a molecular level. To answer that question, along with many others, we're heading to Israel, a country who has been a pioneer in the cannabis research field. This is Dr. Meshulam, the world's leading expert in this field. Researchers around the world.
So let's get this correct. So we're wired for weed.
Know how this process actually happened. It wasn't until 1988 that a U.S. researcher named Alan Howlett first suggested that there might be a receptor, something actually inside the brain, that THC binds to on a molecular level, and it causes a series of reactions to start. This idea of having a receptor inside the human body that is activated by THC was confirmed years later by a group at the National Institute of Health in the U.S. This first receptor was located inside the brain, and they called it CB1. Then, in 1993, CB2, the second cannabinoid receptor, was also characterized. Shortly after the discovery of CB1 and CB2, Dr. Meshulam identified anandamide, the body's very own produced form of THC.
Okay, so you got the CB1 and you got the CB2 receptors. And then you got the amyloids, which stands for TCB, the part of marijuana. Well, dang, no wonder I'm flying high. Well, I am Macarino, and I hope you enjoyed the program. I gotta tell you though, I started to give up on this. It's a lot of work. But now they done got my granddaughter now, so no. They're gonna have to nail me to a cross because I'm gonna be talking about this. I'm standing there knowing the truth. And the parents, they can only be feeling helpless. What can they do? But I know the truth.
Increasing evidence suggesting that cannabis or cannabinoids may have direct anti-cancer activity themselves. And my friend and colleague Manuel Guzman in Madrid is a PhD laboratory scientist who's done a lot of the work to demonstrate that this has potential in the test tube. But I think we need to move it from the test tube into humans, and that's another thing.
Besides Michelle Aldrich, who believes that she was miraculously healed by cannabis, there is another story of a woman who's defying the odds and she believes it's her use of cannabis that has prolonged her life. This is Kathy Jordan, who has miraculously been living with ALS for more than 25 years.
I was diagnosed in the first winter in January 86. At my 89, I could barely walk across my heels. And one from that Sunday, I could brush my hair and my body, I had to lay my head on the stick.
ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, is a fast-acting neurodegenerative disease that affects nerve cells in the brain and in the spinal cord. When the motor neurons die, the ability of the brain to initiate and control muscle movement is also lost.
It's a horrible disease. It's horrible. They don't know where it comes from. They don't know what causes it.
You don't know where it comes from. I know where it comes from. I know where all that disease comes from. You can go to Mars, but I'm the one that knows where these things come from. It don't figure. Thanks to Stingray radio stations, thanks to NBC with Lester Holt.
There are many theories out there that suggest that due to our body's endocannabinoid system being involved in many different functions of the body, the use of cannabis might be a good preventative medicine also.
Anandamide and the other endocannabinoids are actually what you could also call a polyunsaturated fatty acid. And people in the dietary health world will recognize this as your omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids that are considered important for brain health as antioxidants. Both of these molecules are very strong antioxidants.